All right, I will call this meeting of the Olympic Region Clean Air Agency to order. Thank you for being here. I'm Vice Chair Brotherton, filling in for Jim Cooper, who is unavoidably away today. Maybe we can first start with the approval of the agenda. Are there any modifications or additions needed to be made to the agenda?
I'll move to approve the agenda.
I will second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as presented. Any other comments? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Great. We have an agenda. The chair report is really, since our chair is not here, I'm filling in. Oh, Jeff, did you have something?
Excuse me, Greg. I don't know if you want to do introductions before we jump in.
Yes, of course. Thank you. Let's walk around the room. I'll call on you if you can introduce yourself and your agency, your municipality. Again, I'm Greg Brotherton, Vice Chair, and I'll just call around. Mike French, can you introduce yourself?
Mike French, Clallam County Commissioner.
Great, thanks for being here. Jill.
Jill Warney, Grace Harbor County Commissioner.
Good to see you again. Joan.
Sorry, my thing didn't want to cooperate. I'm Joan Cathy, Tumwater City Council.
Good to have you here. Dave.
Dave Tobin, Pacific County Commissioner.
This is just
Good to
ridiculous.
see you. And Michael.
Michael Stedman, City of Lacey.
Great to see you. And Carolina, do you want to say hi?
Yes, Carolina Mejia, alternate for Thurston County.
I'm sorry, Carolina. I'm sorry for mauling
No.
your name there. All right. Jeff, you want to lead us through staff and council introductions?
Sure, absolutely. So my name is Jeff Johnson, Executive Director of ORCAA. I'm joined here in the conference room by Mike Schultz, Compliance Manager, Debbie Moody, Office Manager and Public Records Officer, Odell Hadley, Senior Air Monitoring Specialist, Lynn Harding, Financial Services Manager, and we've got Tiffany Flores, who's running Zoom this morning from her cube. So I want to thank Tiffany for jumping in on that. And with that, I'll hand it off to Jeff.
And I'm Jeff Myers from Law Lineman Daniel Kammerer and Bogdanovich and your legal counsel. And with me today is Jakob Kosters, who is an associate in our office.
Great. Thank you everyone for being here and taking the time. Next up is, the Finance Committee report, and then we'll go to public comment. There's no chair report today, but from the Finance Committee met today. We'll meet again in November. We were looking over, we asked last time for Lynn and the team to put together a 3-year projection for the budget. So we're kind of the wrap up of fiscal year 2024 went really well. We've got, largely due to a large violation, a pretty robust cash balance right now. And there was more conversation in the Finance Committee about how to handle that. We want to make sure that we incentivize. Basically, there was a resolution that we discussed at the finance meeting in April, talking about disposition of those fine revenue, basically, and we're going to reevaluate that at the November finance meeting and bring a recommendation or at least talking points to the whole board to talk to. The other thing we want to talk about is we've got pretty robust reserves right now, but IT is coming up with a lot of needs. The transition from purchasing software once to subscriptions, which means you get to keep purchasing the software again and again, has really added to cost. So we might also contemplate an IT reserve at that meeting in November. But generally, the finances are pretty rosy. We in the financial the fiscal year in the black. As we've gone through a lot of churn internally, with several long-standing employees being retired and jobs being developed, kind of to fill in those real absences, right? These are people that have been with ORCAA, of course, as you guys know, for decades. So Mark Tobin and Moody. So everything's going great. basically. And we will bring back more reserve policies to talk about as we move into the fourth quarter of 2024. And that is my finance report, unless anyone has any questions. Okay.
I'll just add that, of course, board members all have access to all of the finance committee documents as well. And from the agenda under the chair report, the document that's linked is the fiscal year 2024 year end that shows, again, how everything came out in terms of our revenue and expenditures. So encourage everyone to look at those and certainly follow up with myself and Lynn if you have any questions.
Thanks for that, Jeff. Okay. If there's no other questions or comments, we will move on to public comment. We value the input from the public. I'm not sure if there's any public in the room, but anyone that's online can hit the raise hand button or *9 if you're on the phone. I'm not sure if we have any public in there either.
We do not have any waiting.
Okay, I'll make one last call for public comment, and seeing none, I will close public comment. We have 3 action items on our consent agenda, both the regular meeting minutes from July 10th, the bylaw committee meeting minutes, and also expenditures and disbursements from July to September 6th. Joan, did you have a question? I wasn't sure, Joan, if you're trying to, we can't hear you. Okay, moving on then. So are there any questions or comments on any items in the consent agenda? And if not, I would welcome a motion to move the consent agenda.
I also move.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Tobin and seconded by Carolina. I got it wrong again, didn't I? I'm
No,
sorry.
you got it. You got it.
I got it right. Okay. Okay. But if I say it wrong once, I'm going to say it. I'm Carolina. Okay. Thank you. Any further comments or questions? All right. All in favor of moving the consent agenda as presented, indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Great. Well, we have some unfinished business, so we'll go to the bylaws updates. I don't know, Jeff, am I going to Mike here? Mike chaired this, or wait, I forgot who was chairing the bylaws committee. Okay, Mike, you want to talk about this, or Jeff? Who am I handing this to?
Either or, I think that we had some good discussions, but most of our decisions were really fairly straightforward. And just the thing to note is that one of the larger discussions we had in our bylaws committee ended up being about the electronic signature policy, which will be the action we kind of take after this. But if Jeff wants to walk us through all the individual changes, I think that's fine. Like I said, I think that most of our changes were pretty straightforward. A recommendation.
Shall is now will. That's the big one.
That's the big one.
Yes.
And there's some open public
Yes.
meeting stuff and some executive session stuff that we just kind of cleaned up, some public comment stuff, but yeah.
And also really ensconcing in that we do principally do our meetings virtually, which is a real
Yes.
something that we adjusted in COVID, and we're updating our bylaws to reflect the current practice.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, I guess the only thing I'll add to that is that we are in the practice of updating our bylaws every 3 years. Last time they were updated was July of 2021, so it was time to take a look. But as you saw, hopefully you took a look at the red line changes that were shared with the board packet, all relatively minor updates. Again, the fact that we are now primarily hybrid or remote has brought up how are we signing our documents? So again, that then led to the discussion of the need for an electronic signature policy. The committee talked about the need for both using like a software mediated electronic signature like Adobe or DocuSign, but then also being able to simply use a digital scan of a wet signature. So again, we'll get to the e-signature policy in just a minute. So, but that's where we were trying to get to. And so so I think that as we've said, the updates are relatively minor, and hopefully we're ready to go with finalizing those bylaws.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff. So we'll take on the e-signature policy after we conclude any action on this. But first, on the bylaws updates, did anyone notice anything that jumped out at you? Any comments or questions, issues? Well, that's good. Looks like, Mike, good job. So I guess I would welcome a motion if there are no objections to these updates to our bylaw policy. Our bylaws. Mhm.
So moved.
I'll second.
Second.
All right, I think Commissioner Tobin got in there first, but we'll give the next one. Okay, any further comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, I call the question. All in favor of the motion on the floor to approve the updates to the ORCAA bylaws indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that is unanimous. We've touched on the next topic a little bit already, but the electronic signature, I don't know, Mike, did you want to talk any more about that?
This is something that I think Jeff mostly developed internally, so I'll let him talk about it.
Okay, sure. So this is something that we again, ORCAA hadn't had an e-signature policy, reached out to some other local clean air agencies and heard from Southwest Clean Air Agency. And so the policy is essentially similar to theirs, ran it by our legal counsel, and Jeff made some updates to theirs. We added a few things based on the bylaw committee discussion that weren't in the version that we got, but again, I think it's a fairly straightforward document. One thing, actually, Tiffany, could you share that document? After sharing it, one minor addition came up that I'd like to point out to the board that I'd like to make to this. So if you look at, I think it's number 4 and number 10, Lynn had suggested just adding where it says electronic signature software may be used it says vouchers, but just clarify that means financial vouchers, just to clarify the kind of voucher. So if you scroll down to number 4. All right, there's 4, and also it's in 10. It refers to vouchers, and just clarify that we mean financial vouchers.
So did you want to add the word financial before vouchers, or are we just?
Yes.
Okay. That seems like a reasonable update. And so just to make sure that I'm clear, this means after today's meeting, if we pass this, then we vote on something and affirm it, and then staff can use our electronic signatures to affix directly to the approved documents, and we do not have to sign wet signatures anymore for these remote meetings.
Correct. I mean, I would say that though, it's not just a blanket approval that it has to be sort of issue by issue specific. I mean, I think if at the board meetings, the board all assent to the minutes, then presumably we can attach, I think the board chair's signature on those, but yeah, so it will be a issue by issue. So it's not, so I don't know if that clarification helps. And Jeff, it looked like did you have something you wanted to say?
Oh, no, that was just noting that we had more than 6 affirmative votes to amend the bylaws, so that it's 2/3 of the entire.
Thank you for that update. That is a detail we forgot to mention as we were going through that, but we do need 2/3 of the board to approve bylaw updates. Okay, so this is a new policy, not redoing an old policy. Any other questions or comments on this electronic signature policy as presented, or I guess as updated here, the clarifying scrivener's correction? All right, well, if there's no further conversation about this, I would welcome a motion.
I'll move to adopt the electronic signature policy.
All right, moved by Jill, seconded, was that Dave? Did you second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any further conversation? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of approving the electronic signature policy as presented and modified here slightly today, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, great. We've got one more item on unfinished business. This is the board handbook. Jeff, you want to take this?
But yeah, But actually, Tiffany, if you could stop sharing, I don't think we need this up for the discussion. I mean, you all have access to it, but the only reason why we brought this up for discussion is because it's mentioned, it's referred to in the board bylaws, so I thought it was a good chance to get it in front of the bylaw committee and the full board, just to see if you had any suggestions to improve the board handbook. The conversation we had at the bylaw committee really centered on updating the acronym list. And so you'll see an updated acronym list in, I know we do use a few acronyms around here. And so that's updated. We updated the agency org chart, but those were really the only substantive updates. But the idea is that this is hopefully a helpful document to you all. Certainly as new board members are transitioning onto the board, we use it, but then hopefully it's something that you can go back to as needed. We do one thing that, Greg, I think it was something you mentioned, is that perhaps it'd be helpful to have access to the acronym list or just make it readily available. And so Debbie and I were talking a little bit about that, and we thought where we could share it. So Tiffany, actually, if you could share your screen and go to the board index that we talked about earlier this morning, show you all where Debbie and I talked about putting the board handbooks for hopefully easy access. Okay, so yeah, if you can make it a bit bigger. So when you get the email that Debbie sends and you click on it, this is what comes up. So this index. So if you click on the parent directory, that takes you up a directory, and click on it again, and then click on it one more time to take you to the list. So then you'll see a list of documents by year, and then there is an other documents folder at the bottom. And so right now that this has an old document in it that we'll work to remove. But Debbie and I's thought was that we could just put the board handbook in this folder where you all have it relatively easy access. And that, again, the board handbook includes the acronym list. Does that work for folks?
I think that's pretty good. I guess, I think when I recommended it, I was thinking about our ASO that I've served on. I don't right now, but there's a lot of alphabet soup in that group too, on the medical side instead of the air quality side. But what they do is they just amend every agenda itself just with the acronym list. So, I mean, we're not printing out agendas for everyone, and you wouldn't have to print out that page per se, but if it was just amended to the acronym list, not just the board, and in the board packet, but just if you amended the agenda with that acronym list, would that cause problems? Because it seems like it would add accessibility to both, newer board members, old board members that forget sometimes, and also the public.
Questions, Debbie? So as the person that compiles the packets, just want to, we can include a link from the agenda to the acronym list. So we typically, on the compliance reports, there's a long, following the pages that are part of the compliance reports, then there's an explanation of those compliance reports. But of course, the acronym list is not just compliance related, it's monitoring related, and it's kind of all things ORCAA related. So we want to have it generally available. But yeah, we do make the board agenda planner. That's linked to all of the agendas. So maybe we could do something similar to what we do with the board agenda planner. Does that work for you, Debbie, or do you have some thoughts?
I'm just trying to figure out what to attach it to.
Okay.
Yeah, we can work on that.
I finally figured out where you were talking about. It took a lot of clicks to get back there. It might be an easier way to do that.
Okay.
Maybe a link to the whole board handbook is what we need instead of just the acronym list. Though I find the acronym list something, really accessible, makes it really helpful. And I think it's a great list. I looked through it and I was like, oh yeah, even reading things that I understood, I got a deeper understanding of them. So I like it.
Can you stop sharing, Tiffany? Great, thank you. Okay, we'll work on it, and we'll have, so for the October meeting, you'll see the board handbook linked in there somewhere.
Great, Thank you so much.
Yeah, maybe it could just be part of the body of the agenda that's at the bottom all the time, so it's there.
Okay.
Okay, well,
Yeah,
thank you for that work. Oh, sorry.
the
Jeff, go
handbook
ahead.
itself is quite long, so I don't think we want to attach, because I mean, it has the regulations and, I mean, a lot of stuff in there. So, but maybe we could keep the handbook in the folder that we showed on the, that they had to take a lot of clicks for. So the handbook will be there, but the acronym list is just something that we attach then to the board packet every month. Because I'm guessing that that's what gets the most use from the board handbook.
That sounds right to me. Other thoughts on this before we move on?
Oh, sounds good.
Well, thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Jeff, for addressing that. Really appreciate it. I think it's a real asset. Okay, on to staff reports. We'll turn it over to Jeff for the director's report.
Okay, well, thank you. Before launching into my report, I'm going to talk a little bit about the communications report, which is what, since Dan is not here today, he did provide a communications report, a one-pager. So Tiffany, could you share that document, please, on the screen? Great. So again, this just had some highlights from Dan's department from the month, or actually the 2 months since we've last met. But Dan is, I think, fishing near Bend, Oregon this week. So, we've been busy with outreach events. We were at Harbor Days here in Olympia over Labor Day weekend. Dan has a couple other upcoming events, which are mentioned here. Only other thing I'll mention from here is that Dan's been busier posting things to the ORCAA News and Notices webpage. Been trying to post weekly there, and so you'll see. So hopefully you all are subscribed to ORCAA's email list, and if not, reach out to me, reach out to Dan, and we can get you subscribed. A variety of information goes out here. You can see some of Dan's recent posts there at the top. EPA recently updated their Air Now, what's called the fire and smoke map, which is a great way to see air quality in your area, especially when we've got a lot of wildfires, wildfire smoke. But the second thing I'll mention there is EPA's report on 50 years of clean air protection. Tiffany, if you could click on that link. This is a really good report that I encourage you, when you have a chance, to take a look at. Of course, managing clean air is a complex job that's accomplished by the federal government, by state government, and by local agencies like ORCAA. And so actually, if you could scroll down just a little bit and click on the link there, click on that link. So this is the EPA's annual report. They put together this, it's in a story map format, and so it's interactive, and it hits on a lot of areas where ORCAA is very active, whether it's permitting, monitoring, air toxics, a lot of different areas. And so would encourage you to take a look at that, because it's, again, kind of shows a lot of the work that ORCAA and agencies like us do throughout the year. So let's see, any questions about you can stop sharing now, Tiffany. I think. Any questions about the communications report before I launch into some things from me?
Looks great.
Okay, great. So past few months, myself and other members of the management team and the agency, we've been pretty focused internally on some internal policies. We were just talking about the bylaws, the e-signature policy, board handbook, working with Chris and Dan on updating our IT policy handbook. So might remember that at I think it was the May meeting, Chris gave an update on, we had an audit, cybersecurity audit from the state auditor's office. And overall, we did very well on that. But one of the recommendations they had is that we write down more of our IT policies and document those. So we've now done that. Another recommendation of the SAO was to move, and also our Endurus, our insurance insurance pool is to implement multi-factor authentication. And so that's something we've also done agency-wide. We've made some small tweaks to the forms and how the agency tracks our time. We've been working on some records issues with teams. We've working on document accessibility things. We're preparing the agency for First Amendment audits. As probably remember, I reported out, I think at the April meeting, we did have a First Amendment auditor come to the ORCAA ORCAA office in April. And so the agency did handle that very well, but MRSC had a recent webinar and has some really good resources on that. So we've been talking about that. Working as was part of our budget this year, working with Compensation Connections and an HR consulting firm, we're going to be doing overtime eligibility versus, we're going to be doing Fair Labor Standards Act review on all of our positions. At this point, myself and Mike Schultz are the only overtime exempt staff in the agency. So we're taking a look at that. So we've been working on our job descriptions, and so we've been doing that. A few of us are been meeting to talk about our database and the process of replacing our database. And we're looking at putting together a request for proposals and to go out later this fall for a new database. So that's, we've got a 20-plus-year-old system that has a Access front end, SQL back end, really needs to be replaced. It's showing its age in different ways. And so that's going to be a major focus for the agency, for myself and other members of the agency over the coming period of time. So those are just some of the inwardly focusing things that have kept me and others busy. A couple other things I wanted to mention, a follow-up to this discussion we had in July about the definition of something called flame cap kilns, which were added to the State Clean Air Act based upon legislation last session. Probably remember we talked about it at the July meeting, and the board asked me to put together a letter to send to the Department of Ecology expressing ORCAA's interest in their efforts to update their WAC 173-425, which is the outdoor burning rule, to incorporate the new definition for these devices and to update the rule in a way that's consistent with the intent of the legislation. So I've been talking to folks at Ecology. They are planning to open rulemaking on that rule next month in October. And so once they've opened rulemaking, I will put that letter together. Again, I'll know a little bit more about what the scope of the rulemaking is and how to best form that, how to best put that letter together. And then also by waiting until after they open the rulemaking, that letter will also be part of the rule file, part of the official rule file. So I just wanted to follow up with you on a previous discussion. Let's see. Next thing, I'd just like to thank Leonard Barnes, the executive director at the Port of Grays Harbor. He spent half a day showing myself, Mike Schultz, Dan Nelson, Jake Harmony, and Aaron Manley, who gave us a tour of some of the port facilities around the Aberdeen-Hoquiam area at the end of July. Again, the port, ORCAA has a lot of our registered sources and a lot of ORCAA permits on land that's leased from the port. We work closely with them. So it was great to have that tour. Leonard's been with the port since I think 1984, he said. So a lot of history. I mean, it was just amazing as he would drive us around. He would point out to all the different buildings and just read out, oh yeah, that's so-and-so. They've been there since. So anyway, an amazing amount of knowledge. So just wanted to call out Leonard because that was a great opportunity for a number of us. And then I think just lastly, I'll mention that I will miss the October board meeting as I will be in Alexandria, Virginia for attending the fall meeting of the National Association of Clean Air Agencies, or NACA. NACA is an association of 156 state, territorial, and local air agencies, and especially for small agencies like ORCAA, being part of a large organization like NACA is really helpful, really helps to amplify our voice. And since this meeting is right in the middle of that, I will turn the meeting over to the very capable hands of Mike Schultz. So thank you, Mike. And yeah, I think that's it, unless there are any questions about anything I've gone over or other things that you would like to ask me before I hand it off to Mike for his compliance update.
Questions, comments? I will just say thank you for, the plan and for commenting on the rulemaking for the outdoor burning. I really appreciate staying with that. I think it's important for us to, use the subject matter expertise we have to make sure that these rules are effective and enforceable. So I appreciate it.
Great. And I saw that Tiffany just put a link in the chat. So that is a link to NACA's, they do a year-end review every year. And so if you're interested in learning a little bit more about what NACA, the organization, what they've been up to and how they advocate for agencies like ORCAA, please take a look at that report. It's a relatively short report. So thank you, Tiffany. Okay, with that, Mike.
Okay, hello, everyone. Good morning, I guess. You've got the packets from the inspectors, what they've completed and done, and also the engineers, what they've done. I can answer questions on those after I finish the brief compliance report I'll give you. Just some highlights, and this is probably not a highlight that I started out with, but Nancy Wood-Sigmund, she's an AQS3. She submitted her resignation to us. She's been with us 2.5 years. She came with like over 20 years of Title V experience in industry, so it's going to be a loss. Fortunately, her resignation won't be till December 20th, so she's given us plenty of time to replace her, which will be nice. But she's gonna go out and do some private consulting, open her own consulting firm. So, we wish her the best. We will be looking at hopefully getting an announcement, a job position announcement out in October, and hopefully a hiring in December or late November, early December. So if you know anybody who wants to work for the great agency of ORCAA and they qualify for an air quality specialist, tell them to apply, give them my name and they can talk to me. But so we'll lose her and then we'll hopefully have a new member that same month. Also, as you know, it's been raining a lot, but there's still burn bans everywhere. So administrative staff and the inspectors have been doing a whole lot of communicating and talking on the phone to people as to why there's still a burn ban, and yes, there's still a burn ban, and what they can burn and not burn. So that takes actually a lot of time this time of year because people think it's the first raindrop, they think they can start burning, and it doesn't quite work that way.
And sorry, Mike, I just realized that the owl is not moving to you. I don't know why. So anyway,
and I guess he does.
You want to come sit over next to me, or you just want to?
If you guys want to see
a vampire.
What's that?
They said maybe Mike is a vampire, but that's probably
maybe. Got
At
it.
least you can see me talk.
Odell's not a vampire.
No, okay, here. No, it's not showing. Maybe it's me.
It should, there you go.
Okay,
Come on, Mr. Owl.
come on.
All right, there we go. We can see you.
Okay, there you go. I'm just practicing for October when I'll be doing this with Jeff Scott. So anyway, now you can see me talk. Most people don't want to see me. So inspectors, that's kind of the highlights. Losing somebody, we're gonna hopefully hire somebody, and lots of burn calls because people get confused with the rain. Engineer highlights, we've issued 7 permits since the last board meeting, and that's actually a lot because the peaks and valleys, they've been working through a whole lot of engineer reports, and they've got a few more that are just waiting for payment. So they've been doing a great job of getting a whole bunch of permits out. They've actually been working with a whole lot of larger ports. They've been tasked with talking to the Port of Port Angeles, Port of Olympia, Port of Grace Harbor, among some other ones, Port Townsend, to see, as Jeff mentioned, the port properties have tons of businesses. We don't always get notice of the ones that are supposed to be permitted, from us. So we've been doing some follow-up on those big ports to make sure that businesses that might be there, some spray operations or some woodworking, or gosh, there's all kinds of stuff. That those are properly permitted by us. So that's taken some time, but also we've been crossing off some lists and getting some people registered that been flying under the radar. So good to the engineer team for that. Just general highlights. This is our busy 5 season where we do the big the inspections of the big facilities, and we have 11 of them in our district region, and we've gotten 7 of the 11. And again, those take a lot of time, a lot of follow-up. And so this is a busy time that the inspectors and engineers have been out to the big ones. And I think we've got them in maybe in every county except for Jefferson County, I think, unless I'm missing some. So we've been scattered throughout the whole region, doing a whole lot of large scale inspections. Also, we were fortunate enough in August to have a Western States Training Company co-op, whatever you want to call them, come through to Olympia at Ecology to do some training of sources that we actually do: asphalt plants, concrete plants, rock crushers, fiberglass plants. And so that was a very fortunate thing. They come through only every once in a while to have training here. We used our own facilities that we go and inspect. And so that was a very nice circumstance, and we got everybody out that in the inspectors and engineers that needed the training out locally for some really good hands-on training with our own sources. So that was a plus. We won't see that again probably for several years. So we're very fortunate in that. And then last but not least is Jennifer, the engineer supervisor. She's been doing a great job looking at a bunch of new rules that the EPA has been going over. And one of the ones she commented on was the OSWI rule, OSWI, other solid waste incinerator rule. It really was a rule written to gear towards Alaska, but they didn't specify that in the rule. Basically allowed large scale garbage burning with very little control. And so basically all the air agencies in Washington and Ecology had comments to EPA saying that that might be appropriate in Alaska because of the transportation stuff. It's not very appropriate here. And so Jennifer drafted a really good letter that got sent to them with our comments saying that we really don't want it in Washington. And I think EPA's heard the squawking from everybody, because last I heard is they're going to modify that rule and make it much more specific to Alaska. That's my quick compliance report. The other information is there in the packet. I'm open to questions now, or you can always get a hold of me at any time too. If you see something on the packet, you have questions later.
Thank you, Mike. Great presentation. Any questions or comments from Mr. Schultz?
I'll just add that, I mean, as Mike said, the permit team's been really busy. So if you look at I think it's actually starts on page 24 of the compliance report packet, but it just lists all of the permits that the team has been issuing. And as he said, there's a number of them that haven't actually been issued yet, but are very close. So just kudos to our engineers for being really busy.
And I'll say too, just to amplify that a little bit, Jeff was talking about this during our finance committee report as well, as just a sign of economic health too. You know, that the permits are up, people are building things, and people are going through the process. So that's a really good sign for the health of our communities as well as ORCAA. So thanks. Anything else for Mike? All right. Well, thank you so much. Are we going to Odell now? I've lost my agenda. I'm sorry.
Yep.
Tiff, do you want to share the presentation? There we go. Can you put it into presentation mode?
Full screen.
At the bottom, there should be like a little arrow pointing down.
I think she has the PDF, not PowerPoint.
No, I had her bring up the PowerPoint. She just needs to put it in presentation mode.
Well, she's sharing right now a PDF on.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay, well, never mind. Just make it full screen then. Go back down. Yeah. So next slide. There we go. So I'm summarizing air quality for our, Tiff, can you do something with that? The whole thing, I think maybe make it smaller. I'm not sure.
We'd like to see the whole page on the screen.
There we go. Perfect. Thank you. Now you should just be able to use arrows to go between them. No, go back. This is why I wanted the PowerPoint up.
Tiffany, if you just use the arrows at this point, you should be able to cycle from page to page.
Yeah.
So right now you want page 2. Well, so yeah, actually, I think Tiffany's maybe going to bring up the PowerPoint, which.
My apologies. We maybe should have practiced that ahead of time.
It's all right. We're all patient, especially, you know. I mean, we've all learned a lot about Zoom and virtual meetings, but you know, new people in the same role is always going to cause.
Can you see the PowerPoint now?
No,
No.
I can see your shared screen.
Okay, hold on 1 second.
There we go.
Are we cooking with oil?
We're in the
Yeah,
PowerPoint.
now
You
could
go
you
to
just put it in
present.
presentation mode?
Bottom right, there's a little picture of the screen. Just to the left of the slider there. Yep, that little screen. Yep, click that.
Look at that. Oh, I see what you're doing now. Okay.
Didn't seem to work. Oh, you might have to put it in presentation mode before you share it.
Okay. Things I'm
Maybe
learning.
stop share, put it in presentation mode, and then share it again in presentation.
And
mode.
then just share it as the presentation, not the screen.
Oh gosh.
You're fine.
You're lucky. I always try to turn the camera on to my clerk when we're struggling with this in Jefferson County. So it's good that I have the ability to torture Tiffany as she works through this, but we appreciate it.
I can run over there and do it for you if you would like.
Maybe.
Oh,
All right.
I'm not shared. I'm not in presentation, but
But yeah,
it's all right. We're doing fine on time, so we can take a moment to
We
make
are.
sure we present it appropriately.
Sure, there are no questions in the compliance report. So,
anything else you want to highlight?
well, staff does a great job every month, so it's, you know, I'll highlight it twice because it's 2 months that we missed, August and July and August.
I'll ask a question about compliance. Have you heard anything from McKinley and Port Angeles?
Actually, no, we went up, I want to say early August, maybe it was mid-August for our last inspection. They were already down at that point. They only had 10 to 12 people on board at that point. But that was kind of like our last inspection with their environmental guy, Terry, there, because he was not sure if he was going to be left, you know, on site or not. The one troubling thing is they need to continue with their quarterly reports and semi-annual reports. And sometimes when these facilities close like that, they don't keep somebody on to handle that. So that will be an ORCAA concern. We'll have to work with them to make sure that they still, and it's not only us, I know ecology too, since they are officially temporarily closed. So that doesn't alleviate their need to do reports. So I'm hoping they keep at least the staff on that will at least keep us up to date with the regulatory requirements.
Yeah, I did communicate with our EDC director who had a meeting with them yesterday, and I told her, you know, they need to call or email or something to make sure that they understand what ORCAA needs. And so hopefully that message will get through.
Excellent. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Mike.
Okay, so Tiff, I think you can just use the arrows on your keyboard now to go between the slides, but just stay here for a second. Go back. Thanks. So you guys are all familiar with this screen. This is how I typically do an air quality summary for the monthly PM 2.5 in our region. Again, we are still showing 2 for Lacey. We have the beta attenuation monitor, which is our FEM that we installed at the beginning of the summer in April, and then the nephelometer, which is what we have at all of our other sites in addition to Lacey. So this gives you our minimum, our maximum, and our average PM 2.5 at each site, and then the number of days in each AQ category. And that's kind of the most information you can get out of it. So I have developed a new way of visualizing the data. So I'm going to show that on the next slide for that tip. So these are called tile plots. Can you go back? We should be on July, not August. Can you click back 2 arrows? Thanks. There we go. So if you click back one more, I didn't realize we were in August. You'll notice that some of the sites like Port Townsend, Chesapeake, and Lacey, we had quite a bit of data missing. So only 15 days that we collected in Port Townsend, only 11 days that we collected in Raymond. It's mostly just numbers. So if you click to the next slide. There we go. You can actually see what that looks like. And so each one of these colors represents the AQI category for that day, for the full day. And so you'll see, it's hard to see on our screen, but maybe your screens are better. There's 2 different greens, but they look the same on this slide. Might have to play with that color a little bit. But the darker green, if you can see that, represents very, very good air quality, less than 5 micrograms per meter cubed. And then I have a good plus category, which is that 5 to 9. 9 is the new cutoff between good and moderate. That changed back in May from 12. And so now it's 9. And so what that means is you're going to start seeing more moderate days, but that does not necessarily mean that the air quality is worse. It just means we've changed that breakpoint. What this shows you is every day in a snapshot at each site where we're missing data, why we're missing the data. I don't know what happened in July, but we had 3 sites fail their every 2 weeks we do an automated quality check. That's what QC stands for. And they all failed, which means that we had to invalidate the data that it collected back to the last valid quality check. It doesn't mean the data was invalid, but we just can't verify and confirm that it was valid. And so for legal reasons, that data is now invalidated. So that was unfortunate, but it does happen. Usually not 3 of our sites at once, but sometimes it does. You'll notice we had some moderate days. I've also split moderate into 9 to 20. So that's sort of the moderate on the lower end. And then there's a slightly darker yellow, which is moderate plus 20 to 35 micrograms per meter cube, just to kind of show that's a huge range of air quality to fall under one category. So I just wanted to kind of differentiate that a little bit. And you'll notice that all of our sites were showing yellows and darker yellows July 4th and 5th. That's not a big surprise. There are a lot of fireworks going off. It puts a lot of particulate matter into the air, and it does bump that quite up quite. But no USG days, so that was good. And so Tiff, next slide. So this is August. You'll see the old method. Again, a lot of numbers coming at you. I spoke with some of the staff. Some of our staff really like the numbers. Some more of our staff really like the tile plots. So we'll go to the next slide for tile plots. And you'll see we had a lot higher data collection in August. And again, this visually, I think just more intuitive. You don't have to look at numbers. You can just see all of our green days. I know here in the room, you can't differentiate between the good and the good plus categories for those 2 colors, but on my computer screen, it was very clear. So
it's very clear for me, Odell. It's very clear. It's very clear for me on my screen. I'm not sure about others.
Great. So I might play with that a little bit so it's clear on all the screens, but I think it just also shows you how sites blocks of sites will have bad or good air quality on the same day. And you can see from these slides what's regional and what might be hyper local to just that site. So also I thought that was kind of interesting information. So yeah, if you guys have feedback for me, if you prefer the old method, if you all prefer the new method, I don't think I need to show both, but I just wanted to throw this out there and see what you guys like better, what you find more useful. Get back to me and then I can go from there.
Can we just see if there's any initial thoughts from folks on this new presentation we need from Adele? I'll say I like it a lot better. I think it's really intuitive to read. So I think it's an improvement.
Okay.
Mike is giving a thumbs up too. Other thoughts? Anyone like the old way better? I see some shaking heads. I can't see everyone's screen, but it looks like you got a winner here, Odell.
Okay, good.
And I'm just gonna add that, you know, for the first time, I think, in an ORCAA meeting that I've been at, Port Angeles is not the one that was in moderate.
Yeah, Port Angeles is doing great this summer. You guys are avoiding, I think, a lot of other smoke that some of the rest of us have been getting. I think we've all seen the higher level smoke. But we have been fortunate that it hasn't really impacted our surface monitors too badly. So, but we'll look at that data next month. That should be more interesting. Okay, so moving on, next slide, we just have 2 months of our ozone data. You can see that even at our highest hourly peak, we weren't coming near the too close to the NACS, which is the red line at 70. To point out, that red line is for an 8-hour average, and these are hourly averages. So that blue line, which is the ozone, and on our screen, the resolution is off, and so you can't see the legend at the bottom. So I'll just let you know the dark blue is the ozone concentration in parts per billion, and then the gray line is actually the ambient temperature. And I show that just to show the correlation between our high temperatures and the higher ozone values, so that those two are very related. So as we have really hot or warmer summers, we might expect to see higher ozone concentrations, but so far we are not in danger of going over the national ambient air quality standard, which is great. So that's July, which was our warmest month this summer. And then Tiff, can you show August? And so you can see that it's still pretty warm, but our ozone values, which again is the dark blue, are much, much lower than that red line. So part of that is also less solar radiation, UV, that also is part of the ozone production chain of events. So anyway, that's our ozone. We're doing pretty good, ups and downs. And then last slide. Just a few more monitoring highlights. We made 2 site visits to Chesapeake, 2 months. We try to go once a month. Multiple site visits to Mountain View. We have the BAM. We have an ethylometer that measures black carbon now, that both need monthly quality control checks. I will point out that we get a slightly high, we get a bump in our PM 2.5 contract from Ecology to account for the additional time to operate and maintain the beta attenuation monitor. So there is a little bit more money coming in for that. And then the ozone analyzers in the summer also need monthly quality control checks. So that just requires a lot more site visits. We also made site visits to Port Angeles, Port Townsend, Raymond, and Shelton. In addition to quality control checks, there were calibrations, pump maintenance, replacing span gas, and installing additional equipment. Big news, I'm still continuing to process the Grays Harbor saturation study data, but we did remove the purple air sensors from Central Park and Aberdeen School District facilities. And I just want to recognize special thanks to Sean Philbrick from the Aberdeen School District facilities for all of his assistance in putting those monitors up and taking them down. And he's just been great to work with. So I just wanted to recognize him for his assistance with that. And then lastly, in August, I attended the National Ambient Air Monitoring Conference in New Orleans, which was insanely hot and muggy, more than I've ever experienced in my life. But luckily, the conference was in a nice air-conditioned hotel, so I didn't have to brave that too often.
Luckily, it wasn't scheduled this week. They're getting hit by a hurricane. Right?
Yes, luckily. Well, and I was worried about that too. I said, if there's a hurricane, I'm not going. And so this was a great opportunity to network with other operators and air monitoring and look at new research and find out new technology. We also had a Region 10 for EPA, so that includes Alaska, Washington, Oregon, and Idaho. All the air monitoring operators got together and talked about issues that we all have that are in common and some that are unique. So yeah, it was a good conference, and I think that's all I have.
Got two quick things. One, so Adele, I really like the new way of sharing data, and I know you worked hard. You had to write some scripts and figuring out how it all to put together. So thank you for that work. I think it really shows visually, is a great visual representation of the data. And also, I also noticed that somehow BAM got left off of our acronym list. So we need to.
Alright, so I will,
So we'll have to check. So we already have another update for our acronym list. So.
alright,
Great. Any other questions for Odell? Appreciate it. Appreciate that, iterative improvement too, making the system better. It's great to see. Okay, we'll pass it over to Lynn for the financial update.
All right, well, good morning all. Thanks for joining us. So, I have 4 areas of coverage: finance, building operations and maintenance, our tenant community, and then our employee wellness. All 4 very important. We'll start with finance, no order, however. So ORCAA has received our first notification that we're going to be having an audit by the state auditor's office. Probably it's our 2-year audit that they conduct. And they'll be reviewing ORCAA's records for fiscal years 23 and 24. We expect their arrival near the end of October, beginning of November, lasting for about 3 or 4 weeks. We do not know at this point in time what their areas of review will be, but we'll keep you updated, and we will involve the board as well. So building operations and maintenance, we've had some tenant activity, some movement. We had 2 tenants move out of our smaller units. With the 7 suites that we rent, 2 tenants moved out, one in August, one at the end of July. We did re-rent the premises for both those units quickly. We were only down a week, so very little loss there. And we were able to change out the flooring and do some painting, so the turnover was swift and magical. How's that? We did, however, receive a notice last week from one of our other tenants who has provided a 90-day notice. So this is one of our larger units. It's about 1,000 square feet that we'll be renting for about $1,500 a month. It's a nice 2nd floor, good location with open windows. It's got a new floor in it, and we'll be looking at the walls following the movement of the tenant. Let me or Jeff know if you have anybody interested. We'll be starting advertising either this week or early next week. And let's see. We also will be posting a job opening for a very, very part-time maintenance technician that'll assist us with, tenant changeovers, minor maintenance, weatherization, windows, just pretty much routine maintenance, interior, exterior. So that'll probably go out by the 1st of October. So share that if you'd like, that would be helpful. And then lastly, our employee wellness, wellness is very important right now, mentally and physically. We always we'd like to keep our employees, giving them the tools they need to do their job. And the wellness committee will be bringing a new walking challenge to staff next month, so we're excited about that. And that should wrap up my quick summary. Any questions?
Questions for Lynn?
All right, thank you.
All right. Well, thanks for the great report, Lynn. Before we do good of the order, do we have any reason for an executive session? I was wondering if we wanted to go in to get an update on under I on the RCW about actual litigation or anything? Potential actual litigation? No? Okay.
Hope so.
All right. Anything else for the good of the order? Well, be sure to tell Jim that we got done in half the time. Efficiency. Okay, one last call. Okay, great. Well, thank you to all.
Good meeting. Mike Stedman here. You ran a good meeting. Good seeing Lynn, and hope everybody has a good rest of their day.
Thank you, Michael.
Other Mike, go Port Angeles. Good job.
All right. Great. if there's nothing else, thank you all. Thanks for the good work at ORCAA, and this meeting is adjourned. We'll see you in October.
Thank
Thank you all.
you.